Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're exploring a really fascinating and pretty unique theory, one that connects an ancient alphabet not just to language, but to the fundamental forces of the entire universe. It's a wild idea. Let's get into it.
So, let's start with a mind-bending question that sits right at the heart of the framework we're looking at today. Just imagine, what if the letters you use to write words also, somehow, mapped out the basic building blocks of reality itself?
All right, here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the alphabet's spiritual origins. Then, we'll see how it gets expanded into this much bigger, more complex matrix. After that, we'll get into the really cool part, how it tries to connect with modern physics. And finally, we'll ask, what does it all mean?
Okay, so to really get this theory, we have to go back in time. We need to look at the historical roots of the Gurmukhi script and figure out where this idea that letters could be elements even came from.
You know, this concept wasn't born overnight. It actually developed across generations of Sikh gurus. It all starts with the first guru, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, who first proposed this idea that the 35 letters are actually 35 elements. This was then structured into that grid by the second guru, Guru Angad Dev Ji, and later it was all brought together by the fifth guru, Guru Arjan Dev Ji, who gave it its sacred name. So, this is the crucial point to start with. The theory says that these 35 letters, the Akhar, aren't just symbols for sounds. No, they're supposed to be representations of 35 fundamental, solid elements, like the basic stuff existence is made of.
And the structure here is absolutely key. Guru Angad Dev Ji didn't just, throw these letters on a page. He very carefully organized them into this very specific 7x5 grid. And this matrix, this is the foundation for the entire system.
And this comparison right here perfectly illustrates the central analogy of the whole theory. Think about it. The periodic table organizes chemical elements based on their properties, right? Well, this theory suggests the Gurmukhi grid does the exact same thing for its 35-letter elements, organizing them in a really meaningful way.
Okay, let's move on to the next layer because it gets even more interesting. We're going to see how this system expands from those 35 core elements into a much more complex, much more dynamic 52-part matrix.
So, we're starting with our base of 35 consonants. And in this framework, you can kind of think of these as the solid, stable elements that make up the physical world around us.
Now, to those 35 solid elements, 16 vowel symbols are added. And according to the theory, these aren't just little marks that change the sound. No, they're meant to represent dynamic forces, things like light, sound, and vibration, that actually act on the base elements and change their properties.
Right, so you combine the 35 consonants and the 16 vowels and you get 51 parts. But the system is completed by a 52nd element, which is described as a Singularity Dimension. You can almost think of it like the operating system, or the central processing unit, that oversees and manages the entire matrix. This whole thing is what's known as the Bawan Akhari, or the Sacred 52 Letters. The fifth Sikh guru, Guru Arjan Dev Ji, he actually composed a prayer based on this very system and called it the most sacred ornament, or Gahana. And that name, it just perfectly captures the deep spiritual significance and really the beautiful complexity of this whole structure. Okay, now this is where the theory takes a really fascinating turn. It tries to build a bridge from this ancient spiritual framework directly to the principles of modern physics. And honestly, this is where things get truly mind-blowing. So the core claim here is that this isn't just a metaphor. The theory is proposing a direct, functional correlation. The way the vowels, the forces, interact with the consonants, the elements, is said to actually mirror the physical laws that govern our universe. And to back this up, the source presents 5 initial scientific pillars. Now, these are all established concepts in physics and chemistry. We're talking about things like Barry phases, which describe geometric properties in quantum mechanics, and van der Waal forces, those weak attractions that help bind molecules together. The theory is literally claiming that the alphabet structure fundamentally describes the rules behind these and other physical laws. But it doesn't just stop with established physics. Building on that foundation of 5 pillars, the theory introduces an even more complex, more theoretical idea to deepen this connection. It involves a very specific kind of particle. Yeah, specifically, it connects each of those 5 pillars to this theoretical concept called Janus twisted particles. Now, Janus was the two-faced Roman god, right? And in the same way, these theoretical particles have 2 distinct faces or properties. The idea is that the 35-letter elements don't just act like simple building blocks, but more like these advanced dual-face particles.
which of course adds another whole layer of complex physical properties to the model.
So where does this all go? I mean, if an alphabet can describe physics, what can you actually do with it? Let's take a look at the theory's potential applications and how its author thinks it might be tested. Well, the author suggests this isn't just a spiritual or philosophical model. It's meant to be a practical one. It claims its principles could be used to describe and maybe even predict the behavior of really cutting-edge two-dimensional materials, like graphing.
And to try and validate these really ambitious claims, the source proposes a series of 5 experimental streams. The idea is to start with established physics experiments. For instance, using cymatics, where you sprinkle sand on a plate to literally see sound vibrations, or a Rubin's tube, which is a pipe that uses flames to show sound waves. And then, the plan is to build from these foundational experiments towards more complex applications involving those Janus particles, to see if they can lead to new scientific breakthroughs. In the end, after this incredibly deep dive into quantum physics and material science, the theory comes back to a more poetic and spiritual conclusion. It actually extends that idea of the sacred ornament to humanity itself, describing the whole system as a living, integral part of our own being.
And this kind of leaves us with a final thought to chew on. This theory presents a really unique bridge between an ancient spiritual system and modern science. It makes you wonder, right? What other ancient systems of knowledge out there might hold surprising, undiscovered connections to how we understand the cosmos today?